12 centuries ago, the founders of Ekamra, modern-day Bhubaneswar, engineered an integrated passive climate system. They aligned streets with southwesterly breezes and cut stone-walled pokaris to recharge the laterite aquifer, keeping a tropical city naturally cool for 6 months of the year. In a single generation, between 2000 and 2025, that green-blue infrastructure was systematically dismantled. Over 25 years, Bhubaneswar's vegetation canopy collapsed 89%, directly mirroring an 83% expansion in built-up concrete. Consequently, rising core temperatures created an urban heat island averaging 1.8 degrees Celsius above rural surroundings, with hotspot corridors spiking 4 to 6 degrees higher. The second consequence is hydrological. Historic monsoon flood control arteries, like the Gangwa Nala system, have been buried or paved over. Stripped of their natural drainage capacity, these ancient channels now function as chronic waterlogging nodes. This ecological degradation is a precise mathematical failure of urban engineering. Reversing it requires a strictly quantifiable structural solution. Professor Kapilaswar Mishra's doctrine establishes a binding scientific mandate with a 2036 deadline, moving past standard policy aspirations into executable engineering. The core premise is direct. Natural biological and hydrological processes must be codified into strict municipal infrastructure mandates. Delivery relies on an architecture of execution comprising 5 interlocking engineering pillars: green, cool, sponge, clean, and smart. To see how these pillars function, we can isolate a typical degraded city block: flat gray roofs, asphalt roads, and zero vegetation, and systematically rebuild it. Reversing climate collapse requires treating the urban environment like a machine. It demands physical reconstruction, layer by layer, starting from the surface. Pillar 1 is Green Bhubaneswar. This phase deploys plant life as structural biology, integrating live canopies into the city's thermal regulation. Dense Miyawaki core grids are deployed on vacant government plots, while a sacred canopy linkage extends legal protection from over 700 temple groves into a continuous biodiversity network. Simultaneously, unbroken shade corridors are planted along major arterial roads. This integrates with the Chandaka Bio-Wedge, a codified corridor that funnels native species and cool forest air from the city's perimeter directly into the urban core. Pillar 2, Cool Bhubaneswar, shifts the focus from biological shading to material science and passive ventilation. High-albedo cool roofs become mandatory across all dense housing and government buildings. By achieving a minimum solar reflectance index of 78, these surfaces physically bounce peak radiation back into the atmosphere. At the street level, strict compliance with the Eco Niwas Samhita mandates east-west street orientations for all new residential layouts, locking in passive wind ventilation by design. Material science reflects solar radiation away from structures, while the biological canopy traps cooled air at the pedestrian level. Together, they cut the city's peak cooling demand directly at the source. Now, Pillar 3 is Sponge Bhubaneswar. The engineering focus moves from the sky down to the subterranean aquifer. The city sits on a hidden geological advantage, Cordis porous laterite rock, which possesses exceptionally high natural permeability coefficients. Exploiting this geology means installing minimum 6-meter-deep infiltration pits beneath every public park larger than half a hectare. Rainwater is channeled from impermeable streets into these bioswales, plunging directly into the laterite aquifer. At the 12 known chronic flood nodes across the city, Copenhagen model cloudburst parks are engineered to pool, filter, and drain a 1-in-50-year rainfall event within exactly 6 hours. Sponge infrastructure utilizes the monsoon volume. It routes the force of a flash flood directly into a high-capacity groundwater recharge engine. Pillar 4, Clean Bhubaneswar, manages the city's metabolic loop and physical waste streams. Waste management becomes decentralized. Trained self-help groups operate ward-level micro-composting hubs, while construction debris is mandatorily processed into permeable paving bricks. Simultaneously, the public transit fleet is fully electrified and explicitly linked to solar-charged depot infrastructure to guarantee clean energy sourcing at the grid level. Maintaining this interlocking ecology requires Pillar 5, Smart Bhubaneswar. The physical environment needs a continuous digital nervous system to monitor and enforce it. A real-time hydrotelemetry network deploys IoT sensors across 18 major Nala junctions and 6 lake inlets. This feeds a public dashboard capable of issuing a 4-hour advance flood warning based on live flow rates. Above ground, a blockchain-based civic ledger tracks the exact geolocation, species, and survival status of the 10 million native trees mandated by the doctrine, making the data publicly auditable. Without sensor telemetry, and blockchain requires 0 new primary legislation and 0 constitutional amendments. Instead, it operationalizes existing statutes. The Environment Protection Act of 1986 and the Water Act of 1974 already provide the precise operative provisions needed to issue immediate eviction notices over encroached lakes and nalas. At the highest level, Article 21 and Article 48A of the Indian Constitution already guarantee the fundamental right to a clean environment and mandate the state's duty to protect it. Failing to build green-blue infrastructure constitutes a continuing, prosecutable breach of constitutional obligation. Scaling back out to the macro level, this entire system is enclosed by the Bhuvaneshwar Green Ring, a legally notified geo-fenced forest perimeter stretching 50 to 70 kilometers around the city limits. This table maps the doctrine's final performance thresholds for 2036. The biological baseline requires achieving a World Health Organization compliant 40% tree canopy cover. The disaster mitigation metrics compress the urban heat island gap to less than 1 degree Celsius and mandate 0 flash flood fatalities at all known chronic nodes. 9 centuries ago, the founders of Ekamra engineered a resilient, passively cooled metropolis from nothing but local laterite and monsoon water. The Ekamra Rising Doctrine is a repayment schedule to the generations that follow. By using science as its scripture, the city can choose to remember its own geography, ensuring that its infrastructure answers to nature.